G'day guys and welcome to this business management lesson. In today's lesson we're looking at key knowledge point 325, that is unit 3, area of study 2, and the fifth key knowledge point for this area of study. Today specifically we're looking at training options, including on-the-job and off-the-job training, and the advantages and disadvantages of each. You may recall from the last lesson that we talked about investment and training as a management strategy or a motivation strategy that managers can implement in their business to try and increase the motivation of their employees. We do this, of course, because engaged and motivated employees are more productive and efficient. And it just might be that you're thinking of implementing training in your business. Well, you'll need to do a training needs analysis, which is the place to start. It's where you assess the training needs of your employees. This might be because you've identified a weakness in your employees, some skill or some knowledge or some experience that they're lacking, that if they had it would help them be able to meet the standards of the job or the role that you've given them to do. Or it might be that you're looking to improve performance upwards rather than lifting the minimum. You're trying to improve the upper ability, the upper levels, the maximum abilities, the high quality output of your employees by investing in training to give them increased knowledge or better developed skills or greater experience. Whatever the case may be, when you choose the content or the skills or the experience that you're looking to build in your employees, you have to make a choice between on-the-job or off-the-job training. On-the-job training is defined as training that an employee can do at their workplace while they perform the duties of their job. Common examples include coaching, which is very common in the trades. Most apprenticeships are built around a model of coaching, where an apprentice might get some formal training in base skills, but then largely they'll spend 1, 2, or more years working alongside a more experienced tradesman who can teach them tips and tricks about the trade as they perform on the job site. So a hairdressing apprentice would be in a hairdressing salon, perhaps washing hair to begin with, and then maybe doing some simple cuts, working alongside more experienced hairdressers and hairstylists, learning the skills of the trade as they perform roles and duties in that workplace. Similarly, a chippy or a building apprentice would be nailing bits of wood together and using cordless drills and chopping bits of wood to measurements and performing duties and roles on the work site as they learn the skills of the trade. Then another example of on-the-job training would be job rotation, which I know from speaking to nurse acquaintances of mine that it's quite common in the first year of a nursing graduate program for nurses to rotate around different departments in a hospital and get experience in different types of care and different types of medicine, so that when they do then finish their graduate program and land ongoing employment in a department of hospital or in another care setting, they are well experienced in different types of medical needs, different types of medicines and care, different types of patient interactions than they would be if they'd just gone straight into one area of healthcare. Some advantages of on-the-job training include that the experience that an employee gains from on-the-job training will be in the environment and with the equipment that they'll be using to do the job, which means by the end of the training, they'll be much more familiar and confident with this equipment and in this location than they would be if their training was removed from that location. And generally speaking, confidence and experience mean that this employee is going to be more productive with that equipment than if they were unfamiliar with the specifics of the equipment they're using. So that's great. That's a huge advantage. And generally speaking, when comparing on-the-job training to off-the-job training, on-the-job training is much more cost-effective for the business because the employee is continuing to work while they receive the training. It's not like there's a huge loss in productivity because that employee has to go off the job site to get that training. They're continuing to work, they're continuing to create output for the business, so the business is continuing to be productive. Of course, there are some disadvantages of on-the-job training. Much of the training that comes with on-the-job training isn't delivered by dedicated trainers or educators. It's delivered by experienced staff. And while they might have great wealths of knowledge around skills and experience, they might lack educational training. And more importantly, they might have bad habits that they pass on. Rather than best practice habits, they might be passing on advice around shortcuts that can be taken that might not necessarily be the safest or the highest quality practices. And so certainly the quality of the training that an employee gets from on-the-job training might be a bit questionable in some circumstances. And certainly we do have to consider that while the employee getting trained is still doing their job while they're getting trained, which maintains productivity, if the trainer is an experienced employee, their productivity might decrease while they're spending more of their time on the work site training this underskilled apprentice or this trainee than they would if they were just focused on doing their job themselves. So while the trainee is still being productive, the trainer might be a little bit less productive than they would otherwise be. If on-the-job training is getting training while you do your job at the worksite, off-the-job training is getting training away from the worksite while you're not doing your job. Examples often include conferences or lectures. Your employees get up and go away and learn knowledge and get experience in a more traditional academic environment, or certainly simulations are pretty common. So for pilots, this is very common. Trainee pilots learning the skills, learning the ropes of different styles of aircraft, or learning how to maintain air transport safety protocols will often do that training in a simulation rather than while they're flying an aeroplane, for good reason. So generally speaking, this is going to have advantages and disadvantages that are quite the opposite of on-the-job training. The advantages are you're typically learning from qualified educators, specialists with vast experience, and so the training itself is often more reliably high quality than it would be with on-the-job training. Certainly, the training itself is going to be broken up with less interruptions from workplace issues, and so the training will be much more focused because there's not a job to do while you're training, you're just dedicated to training. And certainly, because the training is coming from these specialists with this vast experience in a dedicated learning environment, often off-the-job training can provide formally recognized qualifications in a way that on-the-job training might not be able to. Disadvantages, of course, if on-the-job training is typically cheaper, off-the-job training is typically more expensive. And not just more expensive because you have to pay for the specialist training, but it might be that productivity at the business is down, and it's expensive in that regard because your employees have had to go off-site and they're not doing their job. So the lost productivity also contributes to the expense for the business. One disadvantage, of course, might be that the employees are getting experience and training with equipment that is not the exact equipment they'd be using on the work site. Might be that they're learning to use power tools or mixing dyes from brands that are slightly different that would be used in their workplace, which means the experience they're getting is not going to be one-to-one transferable when they go back to the work site, and the training that they've got, the experience that they've got might still need some tweaking and some shaping before it's applicable in the workplace. And certainly, if your training is producing employees with qualifications, there's every chance that your employees might be able to use those qualifications to secure a career advancement opportunity in a competitive business. So there's no guarantee that your employees are going to use their qualifications to stay at your business. You can't force them to do that. That's slavery, and we made that illegal quite a while ago. In summary for this key knowledge point, investment in training is a strategy a manager might implement to try and increase the motivation and engagement of their employees. And it might be that you're also doing it to increase the productivity and efficiency of your employees, either because they lack skills or knowledge, or you want to improve their skills and knowledge, or because engaged and motivated employees are more productive and efficient. There are two types of training in the study design: on-the-job training and off-the-job training, and it's really important that you know the advantages and disadvantages of each so that you can compare them or evaluate them if you're asked to. And it is important from a business management perspective that a manager is evaluating the training needs of their employees or of their business so that, should they need to, they can implement training. It's also important that the manager is aware of the advantages and disadvantages of each type of training so that they can determine which training type is most important for their business, which is most able to help them progress towards and achieve their business objectives. That's all for today. See you next time.